Morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Introduction to Finding Opportunities Proposal Development Workshop. I am Melinda Marino. I'm the Research Advancement Administrator Senior within the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. Prior to that, I worked on the Research Advancement Service team within Knowledge Enterprise. Part of my role within law is helping faculty find funding opportunities, so I'm excited to share with you all today a little bit of my expertise on that topic. So we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to show you guys a few resources that are available here at ASU and also from some of our sponsors, and then we're going to spend the majority of our time today doing a live walkthrough of the Pivot Funding Search Tool database. The first thing I want to show you is funding.asu.edu. This is an extremely useful resource, and if you haven't checked it out already, I encourage you to check it out. Poke around on the website. There's a lot of good information there, and I go there probably at least once a week to find new information. So two of the big things that are appropriate to this presentation are the limited submissions tab. So sometimes funding opportunities come out with a limit on the number of proposals an applicant can submit. ASU is seen as one university with 4 campuses, so those limits can often apply ASU-wide. And the research development team runs the limited submissions process, so definitely read your funding announcement. If you see it's limited, check out the limited submissions page to see if there's an internal opportunity. And as always, loop in your research advancement staff. The other tab is Find Funding. That has a lot of useful resources. So we're gonna dive in and see what's there. Here's the limited submissions page. You can search for opportunities. There are also some internal ones. There's internal deadlines and funding organization deadlines. So you can see right here, internal deadlines means that's the date the internal competition closes so that there can be enough time for a review panel and give that investigator who's selected to move forward with that proposal enough time to move forward with their proposal in advance of the sponsor deadline. So on the Finding Funding tab, there are some sponsor search tools. So grants.gov is a great place to look for federal funding opportunities that are either cooperative agreements or grants. Contracts are listed somewhere else. But grants.gov will have everything from Department of State to USDA or the US Department of Agriculture, NIH, the National Institutes of Health, NSF, the National Science Foundation. And it's a really robust tool to see what's out there. NSF has their own search tool on nsf.gov, and you can click on funding and advanced funding search, and you can search by keyword, by the date the opportunity was published, different research areas. It's a great way to search through NSF's funding if you know you want to apply for NSF's funding. Another way you can browse opportunities within NSF is you can look at the research areas up here and look by directorate. If you know you're going to be funded by the Directorate of Education and Human Resources, you can navigate to their page and look through the opportunities that that specific directorate has open. NIH has a listserv, and so you can get emails on a weekly basis from NIH about new opportunities. You can also search through funding opportunities on their webpage, grants.nih.gov. One nice thing about NIH is they do have what's called parent solicitation. So if you've ever heard of a parent R01, this is a solicitation that's usually open for a length of time, sometimes years at a time, and has standard due dates and certain criteria that would fit into a really broad proposal that maybe didn't fit a specific funding announcement from a center or an institute. So here you can see there's a link to view the parent announcements, which might be one place to get started. Philanthropic funding is another area that we are seeing increases at ASU. So there is a really handy tool called Foundation Directory Online. You can access it through funding.asu.edu, which is how I normally get there, just because I spend so much time on that webpage. You can also find it on the library website. Clicking on the link on funding.asu.edu will take you to the library website, which will allow you to click into the database. The cool thing about Foundation Directory Online is that instead of searching for specific funding opportunities, you can search for specific funders. So you can look through philanthropic organizations, see what topic areas they're funding, what amount they're giving in, where they're giving. And one thing I also like to do is I look to research other organizations that are similar to us. Now, researching universities is a little hard because we're large and have a diverse funding portfolio. But if you know another nonprofit that's doing work in your area, you can look that nonprofit up and you can see who's providing them funding at the current moment, what dollar values, what content areas. It's a really robust tool to do some prospect research. I will say, if you find a foundation that you think fits your work and would like to learn more about them, reach out to either your research advancement staff or your unit's director of development, and they can help you get started on that process, because philanthropic funding is a little different from federal funding. I should add, if there are questions at any time during my presentation, please don't hesitate to use the chat function to ask me. Here's a little snapshot of Foundation Directory Online. And you can see here, I like to get started using a broad search because with Foundation Directory Online, I'm often trying to find a new foundation I don't know about. And so, for example, I work in the College of Law, so I might do legal support in Arizona and see what pops up. I will get a list of grant makers, a list of recipients, and I can from there decide where I want to start my research for the day. When I'm using Foundation Directory Online, I'm usually spending a good chunk of my time doing some prospect research, finding who might be a good fit for our programs. One thing I will say when using Foundation Directory Online, geographic focus is a good field to use within the advanced search, because some foundations don't fund outside of their small geographic area. So looking at ones that fund in Arizona, and there's a really handy map. Let me show you. So there's a handy map and you can see it's color coded by where they give. So this is just an example. It's Arizona Community Foundation. You can see here their top priorities are human services and education. They're giving their funding all over, but primarily in Arizona. And these features are clickable within Foundation Directory Online. And then you can see the average size of their grants. I find this tool really helpful when I have a project scoped, I have a budget built, and I'm looking for a new opportunity to submit that idea to. All right, our customizable search tools that we have here at ASU. There are two, and we're going to spend the majority of our time in one today. So Deltec GovWin is primarily for contracts. So on the spectrum of sponsored projects, there are grants where a sponsor will share an idea, and then we as an institution propose how we want to research that idea or make that idea a reality. There are cooperative agreements where a sponsor puts out a solicitation describing work they want completed. We propose our idea, but if we were to get funding, there would be significant involvement from the sponsor in the direction of the project. Contracts are when the sponsor has a specific good or service that they want, they describe it in the funding opportunity, and we apply to provide that service or that good that they have called for. Contracts are the most restrictive of the three kinds of funding. Grants are the least restrictive. Just because something's a contract doesn't mean ASU won't accept that award. So be sure whenever you are looking at new opportunities to loop in your research advancement staff as soon as possible. And thank you, Faye, for linking in the chat the research admin page, which has the Who Can Help Me tool. So you can type in your department and find out who is available to support you. The second tool is Pivot. Pivot is extremely robust. It has federal, philanthropic, international opportunities. It will tell you if it's a grant, a contract, a cooperative agreement. Anyone with an ASU right can access it. And there is some training available both from Pivot and in Research Academy. And if you're running into any issues, feel free to reach out to your research advancement staff. They might be able to help you troubleshoot. But I'm hoping today you'll get kind of a sense of how to use the tool and some of its basic features so that you can create some of your own funding searches. Here's an example of what you might find on Dell Tech. Contracts, like I said, are restrictive and also very prescriptive as to what the sponsor wants. So it's very detailed. These are usually the ones ASU is pursuing. We see USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development. Also, there's a lot of Department of Defense. So this example is from the Army Research Laboratory. All right, Pivot, we're here. So we're gonna talk about a few things. Your Pivot account, profiles, quick searches, advanced searches, results filtering, and how to share and save funding searches. But I wanna give a bit of a note before I jump into Pivot and show you guys how to navigate the tool. The user experience in Pivot is going to be updated. It should be updated next week. So the look is going to change significantly, but the functions from what the team at Pivot has shared on their webinars should not change significantly. So what I'm showing you today should still work. All right, so Pivot can be found at pivot.proquest.com. It's also linked on your My ASU, and it's linked on funding.asu.edu. So there are many ways to get here. If you've never logged in before, you'll want to click on the sign up. And here we can use our institutional credentials. I'm not going to click on this because I already have an account. So I will show you what the login looks like, but we do have the ability to use our ASU Right ID to log in. So before we had the functionality, if you had a Pivot account, you just come in here and enter your username, which is generally your email and your password. Now that we can use our institutional credentials, the first time you log in using your ASU information, it will give you the opportunity to link your account if you have been logging in with just user credentials previously. I will say I went through this process. It was very easy to navigate. And now that I've done it, my account is linked. Just waiting for my duo. All right, and here we are at Pivot. So like I said, the look is going to change, but hopefully the functionality will not. We're gonna start first with your profile. So to access your profile, you can just click up here at the top and click your profile. You'll notice it says Melinda Rowe, Melinda Marino. I got married, so some things still show my maiden name. Once you navigate to your profile, I've added some information, but to edit it, you can just click here. Editing your profile to make it accurate and up to date is a big deal because our research development team uses Pivot as a first line of go-to for finding expertise within ASU. There will be times that Knowledge Enterprise leadership finds solicitations and asks the research development team, who do we have that can help with this opportunity? Or this is a strategic content research area that we want to focus on. Who do we have at ASU? And one of the resources that they check first is Pivot. It's pretty easy to navigate. Everyone can have a profile. So be sure to come in here and update everything. The editor is very user-friendly. You just click on whatever section you want to edit, the little pencils or the add feature, and you can go ahead and add information. If you do choose to link your ORCID ID, it will help generate the publications, grants, and patents section better. Pivot does use some artificial intelligence. So if you have a very unique name, then Pivot might be able to easily identify your work. If your name is John Smith, it might have a little bit more difficulty automatically linking your publications, grants, and patents to your account. And so your ORCID ID can help with that. Pivot does also have a feature that allows you to review the publications that they find before adding it to your profile. So be sure to check that out. Can add in expertise, any affiliations or your education. One really important section on your profile is your keywords section, and I'll show you what this drives in a minute. Publications, like I said, it will pull automatically if it can easily identify your name or your ORCID ID, but you can also manually add. And it's fairly easy. You just go through and add in any publications you'd like. So now that you're done editing your profile, you can click out of this window and you're back to the main Pivot. And you can see, here's my profile with all of the information, and my publications are linked on a separate tab. You can also add a proxy. So if it's customary in your unit to have someone else help edit your profile, you can add this, and then they would be able to log in from their Pivot account and help edit. Any questions on the profiles before I move on? I did want to touch on keywords. So keywords drive what's called your advisor. So this is one way to do a funding opportunity search without having to do much work other than editing your profile. So Pivot uses all the information it can find based on your profile to generate a funding opportunity search for you. Now, this is just that, an automatic search. So you're going to have to filter and search a little more to maybe find what fits your work the best, but it's a great way to start searching a little bit more. You can also search your colleagues' profiles. Now, ASU, being a new American university, we're a little bit different in our organization than a traditional university. And so Pivot sometimes has a hard time understanding who we are and how we function. For example, when you pull down the Tempe campus, you'll see the College of Law is still listed there because we were once on the Tempe campus. We've since moved downtown. But if you're looking for a lawyer to help you with your work, you can come in here and view the folks within the College of Law. Keep in mind, Pivot does have profiles for staff, for faculty, and graduate students. Thanks, Jay. Yes, it's a shameless plug for law. We have a lot of good expertise. But you can come in here, you can come into a profile, and you can take a look at what's there. So here you can see Professor Abbott has a website, a CV listed, and some publications. You can also check out someone else's advisor. So if you want to get creative and think, well, maybe this is a person who might have some similar funding interests, you can just take a look at their advisor and see what pulls, and maybe you'll find an opportunity that you weren't expecting. I'll show you another way that profiles are useful as we dive into the funding opportunities. All right, so this is really why Pivot exists, to search for funding opportunities. A couple years ago, they added this really fun infographic that is interactive. So you can see right now, there is $67 billion of forecasted and actual funding opportunities available within Pivot. If you hover over these sections and move further out, all of a sudden, you have a funding search that you did very quickly. So there are ways to do funding searches quickly. I would say that if you're first getting started in Pivot, give yourself about an hour to set up your profile, to set up some saved searches, to find some opportunities. But once you get things set up, Pivot really does work for you. So you can see that was one quick way to do a funding search on racial issues. Here you can see there are filters. So if I'm looking for only research funding, I can filter that down, and I have 18 results. That's a very manageable search. If we know that we want something from a private foundation, we now have 6. Once you find an opportunity, you're a little more interested, you can go ahead and click into it. And these funding detail pages have quite a bit of information on them. First, there's a website. I can find sponsor websites, sometimes a little confusing. There's generally a lot of information, links out, and so I like to start with Pivot because it gives you a succinct set of information to really evaluate an opportunity to see if you want to learn more. So here you can see the amount available. Sometimes, you know, you might not be able to do your research for less than $100,000. And so knowing the amount available of an award is important. Applicant type. So this field can be a little confusing. For example, this one says individuals. However, Russell Sage Foundation awards organizations. So what this means, individuals within an organization who are either early career or mid-career. There are no restrictions on citizenship or residency or where the activity can take place. Here's the abstract that will give you a little synopsis about what this opportunity is about and some eligibility. One thing that is different from the profiles to the fund opportunity is keywords are clickable. So if I go, you know what, I didn't think using ethnic studies as a keyword, I can click on it. All of a sudden, I have a new search. So again, quick ways to do search. There's always a crumb trail here at the top. So if you're like, oh, I actually didn't want to click on that, I want to go back to the opportunity I was looking at, just click back on the opportunity. And there you are, back at the opportunity page. So those are 2 ways to do some quick funding searches. I want to show you some others. There's a search bar here, and this I find is kind of like searching Google. You can get anything and everything. And yes, Faye, I would be happy to increase the size of my screen. There we go. too much. Ah. Sorry, there's a bit of a lag. There we go. So what I like to do, instead of using this search that's kind of like Google, I like to use the advanced search. It gives you a lot of different fields, so I'm going to go through what each of them means, and then we'll play around with doing some funding searches. As I'm describing these, if any have a keyword or a content area you'd like me to do a funding search for, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll see what we can get to this morning. So up here, there are free text keywords. So if I were to put in legal services, Pivot would search legal and services. I would probably get a lot of opportunities. But if I use some Boolean search and add some quotes, it will search legal services. You can add as many as you would like. There's also a drop down. So if you'd like to find this in the abstract or the title of the opportunity, you can do that. If you want to look for the National Science Foundation, you can go ahead and put it in with the sponsor field. Next is the amount. So we briefly hinted that sometimes we can't do our research or our sponsored projects for an amount less than a certain amount. If we want more than, let's say we're looking at $75,000. Now, the amount currency is important to note because Pivot does have international opportunities. When we do a search, I'll see if we can find some that aren't in US dollars, and that's important to pay attention to. But for here, the searching, it will do US dollars. By leaving this unspecified checked, that just means Pivot will include opportunities in the search that haven't specified an amount in their amount line. Deadlines. So ASU is extremely flexible in how we submit proposals. Your unit might have specific policies about how far in advance they need to know about your proposal, but generally speaking, there is no hard and fast deadline that ASU as a whole institution will say no to submitting a proposal. So deadlines might be important because you might be working with another institution that does have a hard and fast deadline. For example, I had a friend who worked at an institution that if their central research office did not have the final completed proposal 10 business days in advance of the sponsor deadline, they would not submit that proposal. So that's really important to know if you're working with partners. Also check out with your unit to make sure there's not a policy there that you need to be aware of regarding deadlines. But always, as soon as you know you're submitting a proposal or you're thinking about submitting a proposal, let your research advancement staff know. Limited submissions. So we talked about this briefly about how sometimes sponsors place limits on the number of proposals that can be submitted. It's less important for faculty and postdocs and students to be aware of, and more important for the administrative folks to be aware of. It's something that research advancement staff will look through when they see a funding opportunity. And the research development team does manage limited submissions. And so they have a whole process to help guide us through getting the appropriate approvals. Activity location. So this is where you're going to complete the activity. So one thing I like to do is add Arizona if I know my work is going to be local, because Pivot does have those philanthropic organizations that might only fund in a certain county in Indiana. So obviously we want to see what we can do to filter some of those. Again, just like the dollar value, unrestricted means there's no restriction. Unspecified means that the sponsor hasn't specified an activity restriction or an activity location restriction. It doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't one. Citizenship or residency. Many federal grants and cooperative agreements don't have limits. Contracts might, especially from funders like the Department of Defense. And so if you know that citizenship or residency might be an issue for you, this might be a field you want to use in your search. Funding type. We talked about grants, cooperative agreements, and contracts, but there's also dissertation awards, equipment awards, constructions, meetings, or conference awards. So there's quite a bit of opportunities where you can find funding for. Let's say you really want to find some dissertation or thesis awards for your students. Go ahead and click it there. It will add it over here. You can either click it or there's an X you can mark. Keywords. Now you might be saying, but wait a second, weren't there keywords at the top of the page? There are pivot keywords. So you can do free text, but you can also browse their keywords. So if you just click on these little arrows and drop down, you can see more. So if we wanted to look at environmental studies, we have now added environmental studies to our funding search. I find it's best to play around between the two fields. You can build a search that's too restrictive, but you can also build searches that are too broad. So the more you play with pivot and get used to it and really refine your ideas that you're searching for funding for, the better. Applicant type. So like we mentioned, individuals doesn't necessarily mean that the award goes directly to the individual. It might still be awarded to the organization. But one unique thing about ASU is we have the ability to function as several different entities. So if an opportunity says awards are only made to 501c3 nonprofits, never fear. We have ASUF and we have a working relationship with them to manage sponsored projects that can only be awarded to foundations. There are entities that ASU is affiliated with that can do classified research, as well as nonprofits affiliated with ASU that can accept federal funding. So if you see something funky in the applicant type or eligibility, loop in your research advancement staff and they can help troubleshoot the best way to apply. Sponsor type. So this would be who's giving ASU money. So if we want to find federal funding and we want to see some nonprofit funding, we can select all of those and see what we find. Down here, you'll see this gray section mirrors this top white section, except that anything you include here will exclude from your opportunity search. I find, unless you know there's definitely something you want to exclude, so maybe you didn't want to see dissertation awards, you only wanted to see other types, then exclude that here, but keep things broad because sometimes you don't know what you're going to find. So now we've built a search and let's see what we get. Oh, we got one result, but that's okay. We still got a result. So from a search, you can refine it, but you can also save it. Saved searches are extremely useful because it will keep your search criteria and continue to search pivot for new opportunities that meet that search criteria. If new opportunities are added to pivot, you'll get an email no more than weekly with a digest of those opportunities. And from your email, you can click in and kind of look at that funding opportunity detail page. So if we were to save a search, you can see right here, would you like to receive a weekly email? You can unclick it or click it, and I can show you how to change that in a second. So now we have our save search. We can check out the opportunity. And remember I said there was another way to use profiles once you were in the opportunity. So here you have potential collaborators. So sometimes you might have expertise in one area, but it would be really helpful if you had a person with XYZ expertise. You can come in here and click, and here you have a bunch of folks at ASU who might have expertise to help you out. Again, there's that crumb trail on the top, so if you ever need to get back to that funding opportunity detail page, you can click right here. But just like our funding searches have filters, there are also filters within the profile searches. Now, one thing to keep in mind at ASU, I know I keep saying we're different, but at ASU, we have a lot of staff researchers. The role section within the filters is primarily for academic personnel. So this just goes with us being an awesome university and doing research in whatever way we possibly can. But know that this is a larger thing within Pivot. I have pleaded our case for something different, but this is just not something that is changing right now. But you can come in here and let's say you needed someone in communications. You've taken your 1,000+ potential collaborators down to 71. And then you can go and click into those profiles and check out that person, see if they might have a fit. They'll have an email so you can reach out to them. You can even share opportunities directly from Pivot. If you don't know a faculty member, I might encourage you to reach out from your ASU email. Might look a little less odd as a system generated email. But if it's someone you collaborate with on a regular basis, this is a great way to do everything in one system. You can add a little message and go from there. Now let's go back to that opportunity detail page, and you can also see there are collaborators from outside institutions. So this is any institution that has a Pivot subscription. So for example, we know that King's College London and University of New South Wales, our partners in the Plus Alliance, both have subscriptions, and so you can come in here and you can search. So if you wanted to look for folks in Australia, you can come in here and do some searching around about possible other collaborators outside of ASU. A few other things you can do. You can track opportunities. So I have some opportunities tracked because maybe Pivot said that the deadlines were anticipated rather than confirmed here, meaning it's a solicitation that comes out most years, but it hasn't been released for the current year. So Pivot's anticipating that it will come out. And so I track those opportunities to look and see when they become active and check them out then. Also, NSF's a little different, but if you look here and you have more questions about the specific opportunity, or maybe it's forecasted and you're curious to see if it will be released, there's usually contact details for someone within the sponsor to ask certain questions like that too. Any questions on searching for funding or creating new searches? So I want to show you where those saved searches live and how you can turn them on and off. So tracked opportunities are here. And this is from the home menu. Saved searches are just another line down. You can see here where the ones that you have email alerts, ones that have new results for you to check out, all the results. And so here's our test search. If I wanted to edit my search, I could come in here and do that. If I wanted to turn off my emails, I can turn it off right there. Go to options, you can turn it on. Let's say you found funding for that idea, you did the research, and you're really interested in searching for other areas, you can delete a search and just hit yes, and now your search is deleted. Advisor, so this is what we were talking about from your profile. So there, you don't always have to navigate to your profile to get to these new searches. And then curated searches. So these are lists of opportunities curated generally by research administrators throughout ASU for specific departments. So let's say you're affiliated with biodesign. Here you can see that many of the biodesign centers have their own curated searches. These searches are available to everyone at ASU, so just know that. But you can come through and see have curated searches on. So this one here is our COVID 2019 funding opportunities, and you can check what available for COVID, and you can see here who's on the call and runs the limited systems team and research development curated this one. Curated searches are really useful for big centers like biodesign, where there's lots of different affiliated faculty from all across the university. So this is one place where research administrators and research advancement folk can help easily share this information. Now let's say you wanted to link to this. You just click on the little link, and if you wanted to send it to a colleague, you can go ahead and do that way. The last thing I would like to show you within Pivot is the Papers Invited section. Papers Invited is a relatively new section that has both conference calls as well as calls for journal articles. So if you just click into one, it functions a little bit differently with funding search. But you can see here, there's again filters on the left. Here's conferences, special features. If you look at things within a certain deadline, you can go and filter out. And just like with funding opportunity detail pages, there are also papers invited detail pages. And so this will give you kind of in a nutshell, what is the content area, who's hosting it, what are the deadlines, and again, keywords are clickable, and gives you an idea of the topic. So this is another useful tool. Pivot's not just for finding, if you're looking for conferences to share your research at, it's a great way to get some ideas about what is out there. So Pivot is a super useful tool. I hope you got some great information about how it works, some of the basics. Feel free to play around. I have found that's the best way for me, and so that's how I learned the tool. But just some take-home points for today. ASU.edu, I can't say it enough, is such a valuable resource, and there's so much information there. So definitely check out, get familiar with the information there. Sponsors do have their own catalog of funding opportunities, so that is able to search. I personally like Pivot because I can search a bunch of places all at once. saves me a little bit of time. But Pivot will allow you to search by a variety of tools when searching, or a variety of areas when searching for funding opportunities. It can also help you to get to know potential collaborators, as well as places where you can share your research. So I just wanted to give you guys links to funding.asu.edu and also researchadmin.asu.edu. And are there any questions before we wrap up the day?
Can I say thank you very much, Melinda? We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your very efficient and thorough treatment of Pivot. I don't have anything else to say. I'm going to stop recording.